Hello, I'm Maura Carley, founder and president of Healthcare Navigation, and today we're going to talk about problems people can experience in transitioning to Medicare Part B primarily, but some issues we'll talk about relating to a transition to Medicare Part D through a special enrollment. To recap once again, a special enrollment is only relevant to someone who works beyond age 65 and has active group coverage through their work or a spouse's work. So these are people who already have gone on to Part A and so have their Medicare number. And then historically, the most straightforward way to go about this was with two forms. One that you fill out, a CMS 40B, and one that each employer, since you turned 65, fills out, a CMS L564. And you submitted those to your local Social Security office. And that's changed because of the pandemic. So there's a portal now, as we explained in our other video, where you enter the information once requested in the CMS 40B and then upload the CMS L564, which is what the employer fills out. There are other ways to prove that you had the active group coverage, but this is the most common. Now, the two greatest areas of headache with this process are HR, it's usually human resources, who completes this form, someone in benefits. And remember, the whole purpose of this exercise is for the fact that you had the active group coverage to be validated by someone other than you. So unfortunately, the form is very simple. It's basically, did this person have an employer group health plan? If so, when? When did they work for your company? If so, when? So it's not complicated. It's just that the common mistake that people in human resources make is to interpret the question, when did coverage begin, as when coverage began through the most recent source of coverage, when coverage began through United or Anthem or Aetna or Cigna, rather than when coverage actually began, which is what Social Security is looking for. So, if you started work in 1990 and you had coverage since 1990, that's how the form is supposed to be filled out. But that's a common mistake. So you have to be very careful to prove what your HR person did. And then the other common problem is these forms being misplaced by Social Security. They almost always find them, but we have had these forms misplaced all over. And so this is why you have a mymedicare.gov account and access it and keep looking after 10 days or so to see if your Part B is showing up. And if it's not, you contact your local office. You may fax or email the forms that you uploaded in the portal to them, but you really want to stay on top of it. I'll give you an example of just such a sad moment, but we had a client who was diagnosed with a very fatal type of cancer, and he wasn't expected to live long at all. As long as he was alive, he was covered by the active group coverage, but as soon as he passed away, we knew that the wife needed to be on Part B. Remember, you don't take COBRA. And we did not want her to be in a Social Security office with him so near death, and took care of that. But they did misplace the forms, and it was quite a morning, because many, if not all, Social Security offices are only open on Wednesday morning to the public, and they still hadn't found the forms when they closed. And I asked them if I could just stay for as long as it took them to find those forms, and they did. So the office closed around me. All the other people left, and they were really good. They found the forms and took care of our client, and it was the best they could do under very, very, very sad circumstances. So let me look at what else can go wrong. Oh, we've had a former employer refuse to fill out that form. That's unusual, but the fellow had been gone for quite a while, and they just said, no, he's been gone too long, we don't have records. And so that client got a letter from the insurance carrier at the time. The former employer has gone out of business. That can be a problem, of course, but again, there are other ways to prove that you had the active group coverage, and Social Security, in our experience, works with you in that kind of situation. We did have a couple of issues when the portal was newer, with the portal not being able to upload a second employer's form, which we learned by trial and error, but which we learned. And that's why, again, you stay on top of this, because it looked like the forms had been uploaded. But then one of our clients just got a denial letter because he didn't have his entire period since, your special enrollment period starts after your initial enrollment period ends and continues until you actually don't have the group cover, active group coverage, or retire, whichever comes first. And then that 8-month clock we already talked about starts. All right, let's move on and talk about a couple of the issues associated with getting on to Medicare Part D, as in drugs, through a special enrollment. Almost everyone going on Part B for the first time will also be enrolling in a drug plan. So you must select which Part D plan you want to enroll in. Remember, Part B is Part B, but Part D, you have many choices of plans, and the objective is always for your other coverage to end one day and your Medicare Part B and D and supplement to be in effect the next day or the first of the month. Of course, if you're going on an Advantage plan, you generally aren't applying for Part D, but there are Advantage plans that don't have Part D. The whole Part D transition for a special enrollment is a little kinder than the Part B. It's actually an honor system. So let me explain that. When you go on Part D through a special enrollment period, you will get a letter from your plan saying you may owe a penalty. Now, if you've had the active group coverage through your work or a spouse's, you don't, but you must return that form indicating that you had the active group coverage so that you're not assessed the penalty and need to undo that. That's a tougher process. So be on the lookout for that letter and respond timely. Also, note that you only have 63 days for a special enrollment for Part D as opposed to the 8 months for Part B. As I said before, I don't even like to talk about that 8 months, and I don't like to talk about the 63 days. You want your group coverage ending hopefully at the end of the month, of a given month, and your Medicare and everything associated with it, including your Part D, beginning the first of the month the following day. So once again, be vigilant, be conscientious, follow up on everything, get all your cards. If you don't get them timely, follow up. And that's all we have to cover today on problems associated with special enrollment. Thank you for listening. Take care.